Welcome back, guys, to Just a Bit Outside. I am your host, Braden Krebling, along with my co-host, Nathan Keener, across the web. Sorry about the unfortunate circumstances. Obviously, I am not in the studio right now, but Nathan is, as you can see, and we are battling some tough times and situations, but that will not stop us from giving you our preview of our bowl games we have coming up this weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, but we're going to focus on the main ones. So we are starting off with the big Alabama-Cincy game. Alabama comes in with a 13.5-point favorite as Cincinnati is reflectively the 13.5 underdog. And Keener, just starting it off, you've been a fan of Cincinnati and all year with Desmond Ridder. You know, he's been on the low scale of the Heisman watch, despite putting up numbers, regardless of what season it was for the Cincinnati Bearcats. So what is your mindset? What is your overview of this game?
Yeah, I'm very excited for this game. The people that think, oh, Cincinnati's just some non-Power 5 team, this really isn't the case. I watched the bowl game last year against Georgia. They kept it right there, neck and neck the whole game. That Georgia team may not be as talented on defense as they were last year, but arguably better on offense. George Pickens was healthy back then, so this team can do a lot, especially on defense, and that's where I'm curious to see. In this game, though, Bama is the 13.5-point favorite, and this over-under is 60. So this over-under is one of the highest of the games we're going to talk about, but still 60 is not anything major. But talking about that Cincinnati defense, they are 31st against the pass this year, and that's what I'm curious to see as Bama is 13th against the pass. Sauce's been everywhere. He's never allowed a college touchdown in 1,026 career snaps. This year, they target him 36 times. They have 17 receptions, 117 yards, and once again, 0 touchdowns allowed. Also have Kobe Bryant on the other side. This one is the Jim Thorpe winner. He was the top DB in the nation, 41 tackles, 3 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, 11 pass breakups as well. This fifth-year senior has 62 career games, and he's just a veteran back there. Those two are going to be tasked with slowing Jamison Williams down. You've seen him on the film. He's a speedster that can get deep on you very, very quick. He has 68 receptions, 1,445 yards, and 15 touchdowns on the year. This is the Ohio State transfer that we saw his sophomore year. He only had 9 catches, 154 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Freshman year, he only had 6 catches and a touchdown. This is a guy that's really shown a drastic improvement. Once he's gotten them opportunities, they're most likely going to be coming more as John Mechie, their team leader in receptions at 94, actually 96, will be missing this game. He tore his ACL there against Georgia. So Slade Bolden's got to step up. He's a veteran. The tight ends, Jahleel Billingsley and Cameron Latu. And they got some talented freshmen, as you would figure out Alabama would. Ja'Cory Brooks, JoJo Earl, you're going to see him in the slot, and Ajeel Hall on the outside you might see. Curious to see who shows up in this game, but this Cincy defense is legit. They can apply pressure, which your cornerbacks and coverage is only good as your pass rush. You have to be able to not give them receiver separation. To keep that quarterback back there, look for Maya Sanders and Curtis Brooks up front. They've been double teamed a lot this year. I think Bama might be able to try to play some more single coverage on these guys, just go one-on-one in their blocking. I'm curious to see how that works, but this is the matchup of the quarterbacks. What do you think about Bryce Young, the Heisman winner?
Bryce Young shows a lot of flashes to me when we talk about, a lot of people compare him to a Russell Wilson-esque, which is a high name when you talk about quarterbacks and comparisons. Not a lot of comparisons go to high stature quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson. It's very hard to find that talent that matches that play style and the skill level that Bryce Young brings to the field every day that he competes. And I like Bryce Young a lot. I think he's a great talent, and obviously he's sticking in Nick Saban's system for another year. And I think Bryce Young finds a way to win this game. They had a tough conference championship game, found a way to win, tough conditions, and still the fact that Bryce Young still finds a way to win, even when Alabama, who a team don't have their backs against the walls much, when they do, Bryce Young seems to figure it out. So I'm taking Bryce Young. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if Cincinnati covers that 13.5-point spread. I do think 13 points is a lot to give to Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's not a Power 5 school, so they get the disrespect. I don't feel like they should get as much as they get, but I'm going to still take Roll Tide in this Alabama with Bryce Young. How you feel?
Yeah, you're talking about Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winner, has 4,332 passing yards on the year, 43 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He has 3 rushing touchdowns, and you could tell they were running him a bit more on the SEC title game. I'm curious to see if they let him be a little more free. He has 300 passing yards in 8 straight games. Little fun fact for you. Like we said, though, Desmond Ridder on the other side isn't a slouch. This guy deserves his respect. 3,190 yards on the year, 66% completion, 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He is more of a dual threat. He has 361 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns on the year. Talked about Young finishing first in the Heisman. He finished 8th and is mocked in a lot of first rounds. So curious to see how Desmond Ridder does against this Alabama defense. This could be a big game where if he has a good game, this could springboard him possibly up into the top 15, a good measuring stick for him. The running backs, Brian Robinson and Jerome Ford, the last key matchup here we're going to talk about. Jerome Ford is a former Alabama player. He played 2 years there. He had 3 touchdowns all in his second year. Transferred to Cincinnati, where he has 19 touchdowns this year on the ground, 1 through the air, 1,238 yards on the ground. Pretty strong running back that'll get downhill on you. Once again, though, that's in the AAC. SEC is a little different story. Brian Robinson there is a 1,000-yard rusher, 14 touchdowns out of that backfield. Bama clearly has the superior talent in this game. They have multiple first-round picks. Evan Neal's a 6'7" tackle. Will Anderson should have been at the Heisman ceremony. The Terminator's a real scary guy coming off that edge. You got to worry about a lot of guys. Curious to see in that backfield because I feel like Cincy will have to pass this ball. This Bama backfield isn't as good as they have been. Curious to see how the guys back there hold up.
I do agree with you that Smith should have been in the Heisman race over Hutchinson. I just feel like when Michigan came on strong late in the year, the committee felt like they had to do something about Hutchinson coming along late in the year and making a name for himself along with the Wolverines. So I see where the committee thought that Hutchinson would fit more with a Heisman or just leave him off. I mean, we talked about there's only been 3 finalists. Why this year make it 4?
Yeah,
I know that defensive players honestly don't have a shot at winning this trophy. Desmond Howard, you scored touchdowns when you won it. We will never.
It's a big deal to score touchdowns. Just get extra touches that Hutchinson doesn't get. Good point you made there.
I think that Will was more dominant, and Smith was more dominant. Will Anderson. Yeah, I don't know what I'm saying. Will Anderson was more dominant and had way better stats than Hutchinson, to the point where you shouldn't have to ask why this dude isn't over this dude when you talk about a trophy as high stature as the Heisman race. But so do you think Bama's going to win this game?
I do think Bama will win this. Last year we talked about that Peach Bowl. Cincinnati lost 24-21 to Georgia, was right there. I don't think Alabama's going to score 24 points. You're going to need to force a turnover or possibly 2 in this game just to steal a possession. You got to make the most of every possession in this game. This Bama team isn't as deep as we've seen, 1-22. This Cincinnati team is 22 strong. I believe they can come out there and put up a fighting chance. Luke Fickell, the most underrated name in this, possibly got some game planning tips from Urban Meyer when he was at Ohio State. Very good game planning for both. Curious to see what Luke does, but I think Bama will win this. I think Cincy will cover. It's really hard taking John Mechie out of that offense, not reception-wise, but also blocking-wise. He's kind of like what Robert Woods is to the Los Angeles Rams. Just does a lot for you. Worried about that. Think they can win this game, though, and go to the title.
Now we talk about the next game we have. We have the University of Georgia, Georgia U, the Bulldogs play Michigan Wolverines. Michigan opens up as a 7.5-point underdog, despite being the 2 seed and Georgia being the 3 seed, which is interesting because that kind of shows you that the committee did not want to put 2 SEC teams at 1 and 2. They wanted to
back to back.
feel like Michigan's a better team than Georgia, but that's why I kind of feel like I'm getting the vibe off it. But yeah, Georgia opens up as more than a touchdown favorite. And the simple question to me is these teams are so similar when you talk about their defense, and I feel like their offense is variant in different ways. Their defense is dominant. Hutchinson, you have Georgia's whole personnel. So talk to me about that game because you rave over the Georgia's defense.
This Georgia defense has been nasty all year, and you just want to turn on and watch some boys get hit. Like, this is the game to do it. This Georgia defense is clearly nasty. That's why they were the number 1 team all year, undisputably. Like, people, you could toss in Bama, but they had some slip-ups. This Georgia team supposedly had one of the best defenses of all time, up there with some Miami teams, some Oklahoma teams with Brian Bosworth and all of them. I never saw that, but they go out there to Alabama, give up a lot of yards. I'm curious to see how they react. This is going to be a smash-mouth physical football game, though. It's going to be one in the trenches. This Michigan offensive line, the whole unit, they were the 2021 Joe Moore Award winners. That's given to the best offensive line unit in the country. After what they did against Ohio State, very hard to not give that to them. Georgia was a finalist as well, though. The offensive line on that side isn't a slouch. Both of them offensive line duos give very good running lanes to these running backs, and both of these running back duos are Thunder and Lightning. The Michigan duo, you've heard it. The Thunder is Hassan Haskins, H2. The Lightning's Blake Corum. He's the more speed threat. He's been shaken up a little time here. He should be able to have that ankle completely healed, unlike it was against Ohio State. Hassan Haskins, though, he's a big bruiser. 1,288 rushing yards, 20 touchdowns for him on 261 attempts. Blake Corum, though, 141 attempts, 939 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. He can receive the ball out of the backfield, 22 catches there for 1 touchdown. The duo on the other side, though, is not any slouches of their own. Zamir White, he brings that Thunder, real downhill force that came back for 1 more year last year. Looks like this could be one of his final games. He has 10 touchdowns on 718 rushing yards this year. And then Dalvin Cook's little brother, James Cook, who can't love a little younger brother, he has 619 yards, 7 touchdowns on the year. He has 31 receptions and 3 touchdowns through the air. These guys provide different skill sets. You also see Kenny McIntosh mixed in with this Georgia backfield. But this game's all about the running attacks. Curious to see what's going to happen there. But on the other side, talking about the offensive line, you mentioned the defensive line, just these defensive units. This Michigan pass rushing duo, it's not just Aiden Hutchinson, it's also David Ajabo. They have not allowed a touchdown since week 1 in the first quarter. Fun little fact if you're a betting guy out there. Just smart money there. Hutchinson was the Heisman runner-up. I did not agree with it. The kid pops off on tape, though, without a doubt, hustles on every single play. 14 sacks on the year, which is 3rd in the nation, and 69 QB pressures. The David Ajabo, though, possibly another first-round pick, possibly up in the high teens there. He has 11 sacks and 40 pressures as well. Mike McDonald, he can usually only rush 4, really let his guys stay off in coverage. We saw that against Ohio State. They were getting home with 4 guys. It's kind of hard for CJ Stroud to find passing lanes down the field when his receivers simply aren't open. It's like we talked about Cincinnati. Your defensive backs are only as good as your pass rush. You have to apply pressure, but you also have to have them receivers locked up in the back ends. Michigan's done that all year. This Georgia team isn't very explosive. The Michigan team, though, it's crazy. They are leading the nation in plays over 50 yards this year. So when they explode for big plays, especially for touchdowns. Going to come down to the quarterbacks, and I said mid-level quarterbacks. Wouldn't you say Cade McNamara and Stetson Bennett are the middest of mid quarterbacks?
Yeah, I don't know what Michigan does with these dual quarterbacks. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you have 2 quarterbacks that have opposite skill sets and are very proficient in them, let's just say I am a speedster and you are a pocket passing guy that stretches the deep ball. yes, it would be smart to have a dual quarterback system, but I think these Michigan quarterbacks are very mid when it comes to how how precise they are with who snaps what possession, mid drives. They don't ever let a quarterback get into a rhythm and get into his own momentum when you talk about quarterbacks. And I feel like you feed off that. You know, if you go down, you have an 80-yard drive and a touchdown, you're obviously feeling it. You're getting some self-confidence, and then you throw in another guy in my same position for me. Like that doesn't make sense. Or you make a good pass and then you get subbed out. Like it doesn't make sense. It's just like if you talk about basketball, if some guy makes a run by himself and then you sub him out. I mean, it confuses me, but I do not think I think the Michigan quarterbacks are debatably the worst when it comes to college football playoffs. When you talk about all 4 or 5, if you include both of Michigan's quarterbacks, I think they're very mid when it comes to that.
Yeah, McNamara's not a terrible quarterback. He's turned into more of a game manager, which that's not a bad thing. Curious to see if this bowl prep, if they did involve JJ McCarthy more, the talented freshman they have. This Georgia defense, though, the unit we didn't talk about, saved them best for last. Once again, we said these guys were mentioned with all-time great defensive units. They've only given up 11 offensive touchdowns on the year and only 255 yards per game. They allowed 41 points against Bama, 536 total yards with 421 passing yards. That's against the Heisman quarterback, a guy that's going to be the first overall pick when he comes out next year, a guy you're going to see for a while. That's clearly not Cade McNamara, just the reality of it. Want to see how they bounce back because, once again, these guys could come out unmotivated, not want to go back, face that Alabama team for a second time, just hang their heads. This is the veteran unit led by Jordan Davis up front. 28 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. Those don't sound like good stats. I agree. They're not the ones that jump off the page. But him being 6'6", 340 pounds, he jumps off the film. You just see the impact he has. He forces a lot of runs to go to the outside. Just him being in there clogging up that lane. Also forces the quarterback out of the pocket a lot. He can't just stay in there when he's coming after you. Especially the trio of linebackers they have, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith, and Quay Walker. Nakobe Dean, this is the 34th career game for him. 61 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and 2 interceptions. Smith and Walker aren't no slouches of their own. 38 tackles for Smith, 51 for Walker. Both 5 tackles for loss, and they both provide a sack and a half. They need to get up some pass rush on these quarterbacks to make them go away from the run game. This Michigan team has to stay committed. They have to keep pounding and pounding and pounding away. If it doesn't work in the first half, that's fine. You just have to keep realizing it'll be there later on. You got to wear down this Georgia unit, especially Jordan Davis. The key factor in this game, it's going to be George Pickens. This is a wide receiver who might go in the first round of drafts and has not played a lot this year. The 6'3" wide receiver only has 3 catches and 46 yards. That's because he tore his ACL in spring practice. Big play down the field threat that will go up and get the ball with strong hands. Watch him in the red zone in this game now that knee's had more time to heal after weeks of playing. He played 2-3 weeks there at the end. Curious to see if they let him go more, if his snap share goes up, if his target share goes up. George Pickens is a guy that you need to get the ball to in these games, especially just considering you don't have many other weapons other than your tight end there. I'm just curious to see what happens. I think Michigan can pull this game out. I'm on the Michigan side of this running attack. They're running really strong. They had time to put in a game plan. I know this Georgia team's tough. It's going to be a gritty game both ways. I'm going to go with Michigan. They're right in the hot streak. This unranked team coming into the season has nothing to lose right now. Feel like they're going to go out, mix in some trick plays, because we've seen that in a lot of their big games. Michigan State, we saw it. Ohio State, we saw it. Even against Wisconsin, we saw a halfback pass. You see a lot in these big games. Josh Gaddis needs to pull out those big plays. Look for Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson down the field. Who do you got in this game, Krevlin?
Yeah, I like Michigan when you come about talking to the points of they were unranked this year. So they got the chip on their shoulder, basically saying no one thought we were going to be here. Let's prove everyone wrong. And they have a hindsight of no one had expectations for us. So whatever we do, it's going to exceed everyone's expectations of us. So they have that who thought we were going to really be here? And then I really like that, but I'm going to stay in check. And I did like this Georgia team when I see them, but I do like how Michigan plays up to their competition. Every big game they've had this year, Ohio State, no one counted them really into that. Michigan State was a powerhouse when they played Michigan, and Michigan won. So they played all these big games, won all of them. Going into the biggest game of their year, they're not going to go down without a fight. I have Michigan covering the 7.5-point spread, and I think this game is within a 2-3 point stretch, a final possession or final play kind of deal. But I do have Georgia and their defense winning it. I think it's a low scoring game, and I would press the under if I was a bettor in Ohio.
Wouldn't be opposed to that.
Which gambling is illegal in Ohio, if anyone knows. But if I was a bettor, I would bet the under. Moving on to Michigan's rival, the Big Ten, OSU, Ohio State Buckeyes. They play Utah University, big matchup for them. And they have some names that they will be taking the field without. All-American, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, two wide receivers that we are going to see in the NFL draft. They're foregoing their game to not risk an injury and to focus on their next step in life, the NFL. So with Ohio State, how do you think they'll react to this next man up mentality? You're going to obviously see, and Olave and Wilson aren't the only Buckeyes that are missing. There's more than them. Those are just the two notable names for the Buckeyes. But what do you think the mentality will be for Ohio State going into this? Obviously not the college football playoffs like they wanted, but it's a bowl game. Can you complain?
I'm curious to see, because of that exact question. If this team was in the college football playoff, there's no question this wide receiver duo is playing this game, as well as the opt-outs of Haskell Garrett and left tackle Nicholas Free. I think that's right. Not going to lie, not good with that. Big hyphenated word. 4 starters opting out, though, and you can tell it's just, do they still have the same glamour for the Rose Bowl as they would the college football playoff? The Rose Bowl is the granddaddy of them all. I know it's not the college football playoff, but this has been around for a long time in a historic stadium with a historic parade and stuff. There's a lot to play for in this game still that they're just not realizing, and it sucks. So many players have been opting out over the last few years, and it just seems like that's the trend they're going to. I don't like it. I believe it's quitting on your team. I don't like this. I'm a Garrett Wilson fan, big believer of his going to the next level, but curious to see. Talked about Ohio State. This may not meaning anything to them. This is Utah's first ever Rose Bowl game as they came into the Pac-12 not too long ago. Ohio State's only a 4-point favorite, and this over-under is at 64. That line clearly changed when the wide receivers and stars opted out for valid reason. They're the stars of this offense that ranks 6th overall, 7th in passing offense, and 70th in rushing, which that's just because they don't run. They're 9th in points, and they allow or score 46 a game. This Utah offense is 65th, nothing too special. 30th ranked rushing offense, 37th in points, surprisingly. They've scored 38 points in 4 of their last 5 games and averaged 35.5 on the season. 10-point difference there, I understand, but this Utah team is no slouch from the Pac-12. They beat Oregon twice. Oregon beat Ohio State. Does that mean anything? No, probably not, but it's still out there. This Utah defense, they are 75th against the pass, 60th against the run. Curious to see how that happens, as we know this Ohio State team is going to pass. But with missing that duo of wide receivers, it's going to rely on more of C.J. Stroud, and I'm curious to see what he can do. And just this offense in general, you're taking 2 big play guys out of there that can create separation whenever they want. That's easy to throw to as a quarterback. You're taking out 135 receptions, 1,994 yards, 25 touchdowns from this offense. That's a big deal. Yeah, I understand they have young receivers. We're going to talk about them. C.J. Stroud, is going to come down to him, though. 3,862 yards on the year, 71% completion, 38 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Not a rushing threat at all, 0 touchdowns on the year. This Utah team might be able to keep him back there in the pocket, which I would. These guys downfield might be able to cover. Once again, these guys might might just struggle creating separation. You have Jackson Smith and Jigma, who is leading your team in receptions at 80. He has 1,259 yards and 6 touchdowns. But it's more about the young guys you have in. Julian Fleming was a classmate of his, came in that same class. He was the number 1 receiver. He's had some injuries to his shoulder and most recently his hamstring. He's supposedly healthy now. He has 7 catches for 51 yards and 1 touchdown on the year. That's not good, clearly. They also have true freshman Marvin Harrison. Yeah, Marvin Harrison, the great Peyton Manning, as you know, his younger son, the one that the legendary receiver caught passes from, obviously. Marvin Harrison, though, 6'3" receiver, impressed as soon as he arrived on campus with the coaches. Was a 4-star freshman. He's got some size to him, as we said, the 6'3". He's a great route runner, great hands. Just like his dad, you'd figure he's got great feet. He plays like Marvin Harrison. You turn on the highlights, he looks like him. You can tell it's the son. The freshman that really he needs to step up, though, is Emeka Egbuka. Or I'm sorry, I struggle with name, but you know him as Ohio State fans. He was the number 1 wide receiver in the 2021 class out of Washington. Ohio State went out there, stole him off the West Coast. He's very explosive. He's got great routes and great hands. You've seen him flash a little bit on special teams. It's going to have to happen in this game on offense. He's number 1 receiver in his class. Once again, Fleming as well. Those 2 guys need to step up in their roles that they were brought to Columbus to do. Now, it's sad we're not even talking about one of my favorite players in this offense, Travion Henderson, the young freshman, 1,000-yard rusher on the year with 1,172. Also 15 touchdowns on the ground. Are they going to get him involved more? Are they going to rely on him more as he's worked in this system? I don't know. I'm curious to see. This Ohio State offense has a lot of questions for me. What about you?
Yeah, this Ohio State offense is mixed with a number of things. Obviously, Wilson and Olave being out is a big one. And I like the point that you said that it does come off that they're hurting their team. But Olave and Wilson aren't number 1 and 2 picks in the draft. You can always move your draft stock up. I apologize.
Devontae Smith had a historic college football last year. Moved him up clearly. Could have been the same. I don't know. We'll never see now.
I mean, it's just, don't get me wrong, Wilson and Olave have made their name known in the draft world that they're going to be selected in the first couple of rounds. Obviously, Garrett Wilson isn't going to hang around the board long, and Olave is sure to follow him. But it's still the point of, the team thing and the morality aspect of it. Away from that, what if, and just a what if, Olave and Garrett Wilson combined for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns tomorrow? I mean, we won't ever know, and their draft stock could go higher up. Maybe a team wants to pick them and is like, all right, I think Wilson's our guy. And he doesn't ever have that 100-yard, 1 touchdown in the Rose Bowl that he can use to be like, all right, that's why we should reach for him. So I think that and everyone makes more money. The higher up you get picked, the higher money you make. So I think Ohio State is going to do fine just because of their offense is so powerhouse. But this is my one takeaway from this game is this is a true testament to see how CJ Stroud can play against adversity. When you take away your number 1 and 2 wide receiver, yes, Henderson is going to probably get a little bit more workload than he did in the regular season, but it's really going to see how big a balls Stroud's got and if he's really a gamer for the Buckeyes or not.
Not just your wide receivers, but like we said, your left tackle, the guy protecting your blind side. Thayer Mumford moves back over there. He played left guard this year after starting at that left tackle spot for a few years. Moved over so the young man could start. He opts out of the game. Thayer Mumford moves over. Matt Jones will start the game at left guard for him. He played Thayer Munford's spot in that Akron game. He's played a few more spots along this offensive line this year. He is the second highest graded offensive lineman behind DeJuan Jones, the big boy at right tackle. They're going to need to be relied on as this Utah defense is. They're very, very underrated, to say the least. This Utah offense is as well. And if you've listened to us, we clearly, I like the state that we live in. I just don't root for all the teams. Tavion Thomas is a running back from Utah that we've talked about on here. This is this young man's revenge game. He's a 6'2", 220-pound running back. Came from the state of Ohio at Dayton Dunbar, where he was a first-team All-American. Ohio State recruited him, apparently, but they wanted him to go the JUCO route. He did not want to do that. He ends up committing to Cincinnati, of all places. Has 6 touchdowns there as a freshman in 8 games. Only 1 touchdown in 4 as a sophomore. He ended up transferring to a junior college anyway. Just so happens he went to Indy Community College. If you've seen them on The Last Chance U, that's on Netflix. He was not in that. That was the year after. Still went there. He had 6 touchdowns in his time there, 347 yards. Commits to Utah, and now he has the school record in touchdowns on the season with 20. He also has 1,041 rushing yards. Big bruiser that's going to go right downhill on you. No, make no mistake about it. This is where Haskell Garrett would really step up in this game. With him not being there, Teron Vincent's going to need to step up for the Buckeyes, and true freshman Tyleek Williams. He's second on the Buckeyes in sacks this year with 5. He's got to step up, as well as Zach Harrison. He's not announced that this is his final college game. All signs might point to it, though. He has two sacks on the year, only 25 tackles, so that's a down game for him. Steele Chambers, the former running back for the Buckeyes, now the linebacker. This is a guy that he needs to be able to dissect the run this week. He needs to be able to understand his assignments in lanes. Go and stick Tavion Thomas as well as TJ Pledger. This is going to matter. He has 42 tackles, 5 tackles for loss. He's going to need to be big in this run game, as well as Ronnie Hickman. The man from the nickel has 96 tackles, 2 interceptions, a sack, a TFL, a fumble. This dude can do a lot for this team. Ronnie Hickman's got to step up in this game. Cameron Rising, the Utah quarterback. I'm curious to see what this Ohio State defense does to him, pressure-wise, scheme-wise. This is a guy that protects the ball decently. 5 interceptions on the year, no fumbles, 18 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns, 63% completion rating. He's not going to blow you off the page. This team, they love their tight ends. There's no secret. Brant Cuthley and Dalton Kincaid. Cuthley, he has 534 yards, 6 touchdowns on 44 receptions to lead the squad this year. Kincaid's not far behind at 465, 7 touchdowns as well. Brenton Covey, he's about the only guy on outside you have to worry about. Denzel Burke, the young man, should have him under control. Might need help on them tight ends, though. This is where you go to the NFL, you see a lot of the shutdown corners. They're able to go cover the tight ends. They're able to switch on to those bigger guys. Burke is kind of a bigger body corner, taller. This is the time where he could put out some tape to NFL scouts that they really might be impressed with. He might need to cover Cuthley and Kincaid this week. But we talked about that Ohio State offensive line. You got Utah's defense and Devin Lloyd coming in. Listen, this guy was first team All-American. He was first team All Pac-12. He was the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. He has 106 tackles, 22 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, and 4 interceptions. Veteran guy that was supposed to be a first-round pick last year, came back for one of these reasons to go to a Rose Bowl to win games. Now's your time, man. You got to step up. Same with Penei Sewell's brother we've seen in the NFL. This one's Nefe Sewell. This is his last game in college. Second leading tackler on this squad. This Utah team's been through a lot this year. They've lost 2 teammates. They started the season 1-2. They lost their rival BYU. They managed to win the Pac-12 South, though. They beat Oregon 2 times this year, which we talked about. Ohio State didn't. 72-17. That's a big, big deal. The last stat I'll leave you with, Kyle Whittingham in bowl games, the Utah head coach, is 11-3. Granted, he does have 2 losses in a row, but Kyle Whittingham is a coach that can get a team ready and motivated for a bowl game. Talked about Ohio State possibly might not coming out and being motivated. This Utah team could be the exact opposite. I got the Buckeyes in this one. It might be a little closer than people expect for a while. I expect Stroud in this offense to break loose late. Like I said, though, I love me some revenge games. Curious to see what Tavion Thomas does against a team that he clearly wanted to play for. The Ohio boys got a chance at redemption, and I love them stories. Go after it, young man.
Yeah, I like Ohio State too in this matchup. When we talk about Ohio State and Utah, you would think Ohio State is going to win this game by a big margin. With Wilson and Olave out, it's going to not be as big of a winning. Um, they're not going to win as much as they would if those two were out there. But I do think
Okay.
guys bring this dub home. And I agree with you saying that their offense is going to get rolling in the fourth quarter. I think that probably their first or second possession of their first possession of the fourth quarter, I think they're going to score a touchdown and momentum will just stick from there.
I am curious to see. We've seen in Ohio State's game this year where teams run the ball. Other than Michigan, these guys like to get off to a fast start, like to push the ball down the field early. Ohio State could pull out a big play or two early on, but who's it going to go to? That's the big question. We're going to find out. Excited to see this game. Excited to see this new look Ohio State offense that we're going to see next season. Now's the time to go shine, young receivers. You got the chance. This is the young offense that you're going to get ready to play with next year. Go shine at the granddaddy of them all.
Next, we have Ole Miss Rebels are playing Baylor, and this game looks like a evenly competition wise. And we'll start this game off by saying that who should have been one of the Heisman finalists that was a snub, Matt Corral, the quarterback of the Ole Miss Rebels, is participating in this bowl game despite the worst kept secret of him declaring for the draft and he's going to go into the NFL. He still wants to play in the bowl game outside of like Pickett, Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh. Currently, we have the game on in the living room, and he is not dressed up to play for his boys. And you see a lot of these players opting out. Matt Corral, knowing that if he gets injured, it's on him, and knowing that this is something that has been not regulated, but okay. When I say across the football world, is people kind of accepted it as this is what seniors do. Me and you stand on the same side of we don't like players doing this, and we want players to go out and play with their guys, not play the first 11 games and then skip the 12th game. I understand where they're coming from, and I'm sure you do too when we talk about their future. But it's just like, come on, guys, why wouldn't you play? So talk about Matt Corral. You're a big fan of Matt Corral, and you can't say enough words about him. Seems like a gamer, seems like a great kid, great arm, and he seems like a ball player.
This kid loves the big moments, and he's made for them. The Southern California kid was brought down there for a reason. He was made to be the face of this program, the five-star recruit. He doesn't want to bail on it, and you have to give so much credit to him. Kenny Pickett's the perfect name you mentioned because that's the guy that clearly led that team to that record. If you take Kenny Pickett off that team, they're essentially nothing. If you take Matt Corral off this team, I'm sure other quarterbacks would do fine in this running scheme. I don't know if you're going to do this good, though. This team has never won 10 games in its school's history. Matt Corral managed to do it. I love that he's staying. I love that he's playing for his boys. That tells me a lot. That should tell NFL general managers a lot. This is a guy that I'm not going to compare game-wise to Baker Mayfield, but persona-wise, just energy-wise, vocal-wise, this guy's a lot like Baker Mayfield. I'm curious to see what's going to happen. He injured his ankle. It was his left ankle, so nothing serious. He was still able to plant and throw. It took away his running abilities, though, and it was a shame because he was on his way to New York. His stats were still good. They were just not carrying the team, I guess, like every other quarterback did. Whatever, that's fine. Don't invite him to the Heisman. We'll settle for the first round in the NFL draft this year. No problem with that. Once again, he's healthy. He needs to be released and unleashed against this Baylor defense. They are 152nd in the pass. And that's just not good for this. 142nd in the pass. They allow 231 yards per game. Listen, air the ball out. I understand you run the ball. It's just because you run a lot of plays. Set up that play action, be able to toss that ball down the field. Let this man ball out in his last game. He came back to you for a reason. Lane, let the boy go have fun. 3,339 passing yards on the year, 69% completion rating. Only 20 passing touchdowns, but he has 11 on the ground for 597 yards. 145 attempts is a lot for a quarterback. They run him. You would figure in his last career game, they'd let him go, let him have some fun, let him throw the ball down the field to receivers Dontario Drummond and Braylon Sanders. Drummond, 924 yards, 67 catches, 8 touchdowns on the year. Braylon Sanders has been hurt for most of it, and it kind of took a toll on this offense, took its overall explosiveness away. He's back, though. He's healthy. 23 catches, 512 yards, 3 touchdowns for him. This Baylor defense has not allowed 3 offensive touchdowns in a game this year. 12 of their 13 opponents have been under 400 yards, and 7 out of 13, which is half, have been held below 300. This Ole Miss team, they love to move the ball. What's going to happen? Because clearly both of these things can't happen. Baylor can't score a lot, or Ole Miss can't score a lot because Baylor's got to stop them. Like, you get the point. Mississippi's running backs, talked about them running the ball. Baylor's running defense is 52nd compared to that 146th passing D. This trio, and I said trio from Ole Miss, is deadly. They all have over 100 carries this year of Jerrion Ely, Snoop Connor, Henry Parrish. Ely has 703 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Connor has 13 touchdowns and 605 yards on the ground. He's the bruiser down there between the tackles. And Parrish, just kind of a mix between them both, 542 yards and 3 touchdowns. They run a lot of plays. They love to move the ball. They love to pass it, but they also love to run. This Baylor defense, though, they've had some good games this year. Kennedy Brooks from the Big 12, Oklahoma, he had 51 yards. Bijan Robinson, a guy clearly very high on, you'll see him in the draft, he had 43 yards on 17 carries. And even Tyler Algier, who this year had 5 touchdowns in a game, multiple games over 200 yards, they held him to 33 yards. Granted, they did have a few games where Breece Hall had 28 carries, 492 yards, and Jalen Warren, the Oklahoma State running back, the first time, he gashed them for 36 carries, 125 yards. Some teams had success against the run. Ole Miss, I think, just has to keep to it to set up that play action pass down the field. Baylor defense, once again, 30 points. They've held every opponent to. I'm curious to see what happens. Ole Miss has cleared the 30-point plateau 8 times. Like we said, 0 versus 8. I want to see what happens. Ole Miss is known for its quarterback play, but they led the SEC with more than 224 yards of rushing. There's only 2 defenses that have been better than this Baylor defense they played. They were held to 3 yards per carry. A stat that could come into it, I'm sure this Baylor defense is good. They're veterans that will come down, be aggressive, blitz a lot. They have a lot of stunts. This Baylor team is just a veteran team all around. Gary Bohannon is back for this game. He missed some games there at the end with a hamstring injury. He's back. 2,160 yards, 64% completion percentage, 17 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Also has 9 touchdowns on the ground. Look for them to run the ball as well against an Ole Miss team that statedly is just not very good on defense. Lane has not had time to recruit that side yet. Going up against big-time SEC offenses, too, does not help. They've got to slow down Abraham Smith, the running back on the year, has 232 carries, so he's a big workhorse, 1,429 yards and 12 touchdowns. They also got to stretch the field with Tyquan Thornton, about the only receiver you got to worry about. 61 catches, 946 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns. Ole Miss has to be able to cover him down the field. That Landshark defense has to be able to come out ready in this game, not get smacked in the mouth, because this Baylor team, they're physical, they're nasty, they don't quit, as Dave Aranda. He just has that squad ready to play. Excited to see Lane Kiffin. Always love watching Lane. I'm sure we'll have something prepared for the bowl game. Give me Matt Corral in this one, though. I want to go with my boy in his last game. Expect him to protect the ball like he has done all year with only 4 turnovers. I like him. I love his game. real lively arm that's going to be a first-round quarterback, possibly the first off the board. Listen, tune in and watch this game. I think this will be one of the better games of this bowl season. I'm very excited, and I've told you, I don't know what's going to happen. I like Matt Corral, and I think he can go do this. This Baylor defense is very, 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 very good. They beat Oklahoma State. They made it to this position. What are you going to do now? I know what Ole Miss is going to do. They're going to step up and run the ball. You got to stop them.
Yeah, everything that you just said supports my closing statement. When you got Baylor's physical defense versus Ole Miss's run game plus Matt Corral's air raid of an arm, give me Matt Corral. And anyone who watches the show or wants to know who I am as a sports guy, if I have two football teams and I can't really choose, I look at the quarterback position because that's your leader in the locker room. That's your guy. That's who you trust to have the ball in your hands to make touchdowns, make points, make plays. I just think Matt Corral is that dude. Give me Matt Corral. Moving on to our next game, though, we have another defensive line battle. We have the Oklahoma State versus Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. We have the offensive line of Notre Dame versus the Oklahoma State pass rush that they have and bring every night and every game day. So, Keener, talk to me about that matchup and give us a game preview.
This Oklahoma State defense we mentioned last week, they are first in the nation in sacks. They have over 50 on the season. They just have a number of guys that apply the pressure, a lot of stunts. Mike Gundy has this team rolling. And personally, I just think Mike Gundy deserves a lot more respect than he's given. Not just this Oklahoma State team this year, but a lot of years they've had really good squads down there. And they just don't get mentioned. And Mike Gundy really needs to be mentioned with college football coaching royalty. This guy's been there for a long time, has not left this program and turned it into a true powerhouse, in my opinion. They're in the Big 12, whatever, people have their opinions. Still a Power 5 school. This team was almost in the college football playoff. If you get in that goal line on that fourth down, you're in the college football playoff. Instead, they were stopped a half-inch short. That's your backup running back, though. Jaylen Warren is healthy for this game. It's going to rely on him. Like we talked about, though, it's hard. This Notre Dame offensive line is a young unit. They've been experienced for a lot of years. Now they're young again. Marcus Freeman, this is his first game head coaching after Brian Kelly left. He's got to have this squad motivated to step up. You also lost Kyron Williams, your leading rusher. And also Kyle Hamilton, who is your best player. They both opted out for the bowl games for their NFL futures. Kyle Hamilton, big, strong safety. They're going to miss his ability. He has to be able to control this Oklahoma State pass rush. Jeez. It's a problem. They put a lot of guys at you. Notre Dame has to be able to communicate, slow down the stunts. And Jack Cohn back there, he's going to have his hands full. 2,641 yards, 68% completion rating with 20 touchdowns, 6 INTs. Also has 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He's another mid quarterback that won't blow you away, but he's a big, strong guy that can push the ball downfield. Michael Meyer, their big tight end. Boy's legit. He's Cole Kmet-like. He's going to be the number 1 tight end when he comes out. Their leading receiver on the year with 64 catches, 768 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Kevin Austin, you got to worry about him on the outside. 42 receptions, 783 yards, and 6 touchdowns. This team, they're going to want to run the ball, be physical. That plays right into Oklahoma State's favor. But Oklahoma State's going to want to do the same. They're going to want to run the football as well. Get that to Jaylen Warren, who has 1,334 yards on the year, 11 touchdowns. Spencer Sanders, I've watched a lot of their games, obviously, over the years. He's a veteran guy. Man, that last game I'm watching against Baylor, he might be one of the bottom 5 quarterbacks in all of college football. Like, I honestly might take some low Power 5 guys over him. It's simply put, he has 12 interceptions on the year. He can't protect the ball. And if you give Mike Gundy a quarterback with this defense, with these weapons, like Jaylen Warren, like Tay Martin on the outside, they might be successful. But this guy holds them back so far. He's like a damn anchor on a ship. He's just sinking you. and just keeping you in the same spot. I honestly can't wait for him to be gone because they're just going to improve. 2,468 yards on the year. Sure, they're not terrible. 61% completion rating, one of the worst that we've talked about today. 16 touchdowns, the lowest we've talked about today, and those 12 interceptions. I can't defend the guy anymore.
And
I get he's a rushing threat. But your rushing ability is 129 carries, 543 yards, and 6 touchdowns. For all the turnovers you make, your rushing ability is simply just not that good, dude. He holds them back, and it's a shame because this team would be in the playoffs.
And when the Cowboys, Oklahoma State Cowboys, were a 9 ranked and had to play the 6 ranked Baylor game on December 4th, they lost 21-16. And as me and you sat there and watched that game, I know that game ended on a game-tying touchdown by the running back of Baylor, but the quarterback of Oklahoma State did not do that team any favors in debatably the biggest game in his career, but for sure the biggest game of his season. I mean, come on. Come on. I thought you were going to talk. My bad. But come on. You got to perform better. If you are the quarterback of a top 10 ranked team, they were ranked 9, and he almost played them out of that game. I will say that.
No, don't say he about did. He did play them out of that game.
And
they had the lead.
To say their own quarterback, their guy that I just said, everyone's quarterback is their guy, their leader, played them out of that game. It said, I am taking – I forget who. Yeah, I'm taking – Notre Dame. Yeah, I'm taking Notre Dame for another reason too. I think that when quarterbacks and when coaches leave teams and give bad vibes, you kind of saw Oklahoma. They kind of were pissed off, and since their coach left, they played together. And I think that's what Notre Dame's going to do is play together, be like, if our coach left, then we can play for ourselves. And I think this is a big opportunity for that program.
No, it definitely is. We talked about Marcus Freeman. This is a guy who was the big-time college football player at Ohio State. He had some heart problems, and he could not play in the NFL, went right into coaching. He's a very young coach that got this job at a historic school. I'm not a fan of them, but they are a historic program in college football. He got a job. He's very deserving of it. His players are going to play for him. Mike Gundy, no stranger in the bowl games, 10-5 in his time there. I like Mike Gundy in this team, but like we said, Spencer Sanders just shoots you in the foot too much. It's a shame because you have 2 talented guys on the outside. Tay Martin has 70 receptions, 942 yards, 7 touchdowns. Brennan Presley, 40 receptions, 5 touchdowns, 482 yards. It sucks because they can make some noise. They can cause some damage. Jalen Warren can certainly cause some damage out of that backfield. If someone believed they were actually going to pass in that play action pass, this offense could be something, this team could be something, and we'd be talking about them in one of the first 2 games. Instead, we're talking about them at the Fiesta Bowl. They're a 2-point underdog to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame not been that special all year. That explains to you what Vegas says. This over-under is 45. I think we'll go over that, but I think Notre Dame can still win. I can't pick Mike Gundy when his quarterback's doing that. Spencer Sanders, it's a shame this is one of your last games because, well, I can't wait to not watch you anymore. I mentioned Caleb Williams would be a perfect fit in this offense from Oklahoma. That's not going to happen. They got to address this system, address this situation, because this is an elite program that needs more talk, especially with Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12. This could be a team that this is their conference. Mike Gundy, get you a damn quarterback, please. You're holding yourself back.
Yeah, as you take Baylor, as you take Notre Dame, I take Notre Dame too. I think that just everything stacks up for them, even though it's a 2.5 point, and Notre Dame's has not been special all year. They have been average at
lost to a Cincinnati team. They've struggled with a lot, sneaked out some games. Sure, you call that grit and fight. Sure, you're doing it 2 or 3 times. I understand. Doing it 4 or 5, that just means you're not that good of a team. Like I said, Oklahoma State's team's good. I feel like this Notre Dame defense, especially with Marcus Freeman, this is his unit. This is his baby, the unit he's ran all year. There's going to be no changes to that. He's going to force a turnover too. it's just coming. When that happens, Oklahoma State loses. It's just the simple reality of it.
Yeah, so that concludes our preview of our 5 bowl games that we think are most important. Keener, do you have anything that you want to mention before we get off here?
Just excited to watch college football again. I understand the bowl games and that are on, but they're clearly lower level teams with lower level talent. These are the big dogs of the sport that everyone pays attention to. There's only so many games of college football left. You got to enjoy them while they're happening. Enjoy this because we're going to be 200 some days without this sport. That's a shame we got to go that long. Just embrace college football while it's around. Embrace these recruits. Embrace these kids, these coaching staffs. Just enjoy college football while it's here. Enjoy NFL football when it's here, which we'll do that episode later. Enjoy football when it's around because in a few months, well, a month or two, it's not going to be there. It's going to suck. It just truly is. Football, football. How can that be romantic about it?
Football, or February 8th, our last football game we have of the year. Obviously, that time is coming sooner than we all wish. But college football, enjoy it. NFL, enjoy it. Like Nathan said, we will have our NFL preview out by Sunday. Take a look at that. Picks, lines, locks. We got everything over here at Just a Bit Outside. This is your college football bowl preview. Check out our picks. Tell me what you think about them. My name's Braden Krevling. My co-host Nathan Keener signing off. Easy on that cigar, boy.
Easy on that cigar, boy.